Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I talk about the NBA games from today, any NBA narratives that kind of happened throughout the day, and kind of catch you up on what you missed. If you didn't see the games, don't worry, I'm here to tell you all about them and about some of the storylines that followed through these games. As you can probably see from the title, the main one we're going to talk about today is the Nets-Raptors game. In particularly, I want to focus on the Nets, but I do want to give credit to the Toronto Raptors, even though they lost this game by 13 points, 116 to 103. I think they definitely deserve some credit for the way that they played, and there are some things that they've been doing recently that I think deserve your attention, so I want to talk about them. But I do primarily want to start with the Brooklyn Nets, a team that is looking more dangerous every single day. James Harden, it's looking like he's not going to play for the rest of the regular season. It looks like they're going to hold him out till the playoffs. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because the Nets are still really, really good, even without a borderline top 5 player in James Harden. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, monsters. Neither of them even had a great game today. At least I say great by their standards. When you compare it to a lot of other NBA players, you could say it's a great game. But like, for example, Kevin Durant, 17, 10, and 4 tonight. Kyrie Irving had 9 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and they put up 116 points. It's crazy. When I made a video, I think I haven't made a video with the Nets in a while, which is partially why I wanted to talk about them. But the last time I talked about the Brooklyn Nets in length, was probably around the time the James Harden trade happened, I think. But what I mentioned was that the problem with the team wasn't that there was one ball. I always thought that it was a dumb argument, the fact that there was only one basketball, because it doesn't matter if there's one basketball. If you have 3 guys who can put it in at an incredible rate down into the basket, it doesn't matter if it's one basketball, especially when you have players who have bought into systems before. James Harden played along Chris Paul, a somewhat ball-dominant point guard, and they thrived together. Kyrie Irving was never the primary ball handler in Cleveland. It was usually LeBron James. Kevin Durant has played in a team with Russell Westbrook and Steph Curry. All 3 of these guys have played with people who have been ball-dominant before, and they've thrived in those roles. So I never thought that was going to be the issue. What I thought the issue was that every single night, these 3 guys were going to have to put up 30 points each for the team to win, because their role players did not look good. They were not playing well. They had Joe Harris, is a really solid piece, and they had Jeff Green, who is another good piece. But throughout the season, not only have they added more people, but they've integrated players better. And I think a lot of that goes to the coaching staff's credit. Steve Nash, I think, has done a really good job with this team throughout this season. I know there have been some complaints about him here and there. Some people not really sure how to gauge him because he is playing, or he is coaching for the first time with a super talented roster. But you have to give him credit for the way that he has integrated these role players and made them feel like they're in a proper role for themselves. I mentioned this in my video earlier today, my hot takes video. If you didn't see that, go check it out. When I talked about coaching, I mentioned that one of the most important parts of being a coach is getting your role players acclimated and getting them to buy into their roles, having roles picked out for players that they think are best for themselves, and putting them in positions to succeed. That's what Steve Nash has done. Kyrie Irving has been playing the shooting guard most of the season while James Harden runs point, because honestly, James Harden's just a better ball handler than Kyrie Irving is. I'm talking ball handler in terms of like playmaking type stuff. In terms of handles, Kyrie is the best to ever do it. But in terms of playmaking, like a point guard usually does for an NBA team, James Harden is the better player in that aspect, and so he's been doing that. Kyrie Irving has just been shooting, he's been getting his isolation buckets, and just scoring more so, which is his ultimate talent. And then Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. I don't need to tell you who Kevin Durant is or his role. He's just been the monster that he's always been. But the other guys are really the part that you have to look at to see how well this team has done, or how well this coaching staff has done throughout the season. Jeff Green has been really good for them. Tonight he played center for them, 22 points, 8 rebounds and 1 assist. Great game from Jeff Green. He's had a ton of these great games. It's kind of weird to think that Jeff Green's been on 10 different teams when he's been such a solid role player for so long. But at the same time, maybe that is why he's been on so many teams, because so many teams want a shot at getting Jeff Green. Maybe that's why. But he's been really good for them. He knocks down threes, and the players that they put around these 3 talents are perfect for this team because they aren't demanding the ball, and if they get a shot, they're going to take that shot. Jeff Green, who I just talked about, has been really good. Joe Harris. Joe Harris has the best job in the entire world. There's no one in the world with a better job than Joe Harris. Joe Harris gets to stand there and get passes from Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden for 48 minutes a night, or however many minutes he actually plays during a game. And he just shoots threes. That's all they ask him to do, and he shoots like a 1,000,000% on threes because he gets the best looks ever because the defense has to contend with 3 top 15 players outside of him. He has the best job in the world, and he gets paid hella money to do it. Shout out to Joe Harris, man, UVA legend. Landry Shamet, a guy who's really been coming along. Tyler Johnson, who's given them some pretty good backup point guard minutes. Blake Griffin, been really good since coming from the Pistons. He's playing his role perfectly. He hasn't been a superstar. He's not like the Blake Griffin of a couple seasons ago where he looked like an MVP type player on Detroit Pistons, but he looks way better than the Detroit Pistons Blake Griffin that never dunked, or who hasn't dunked since 2019 until he got to Brooklyn. And then you talk about Mike James, a guy who they literally just signed him days ago from overseas. 11, 3, and 8 tonight. He had a great game. And like, this Raptors team isn't a pushover. I know they're not right now in the playoff picture. They're right there with the play-in tournament. But they're still a solid team. This Raptors team is better than their record indicates. And not only that, but they've just been beating teams missing one of their guys. Kevin Durant missed a ton of time. James Harden has now missed a bunch of time. Kyrie Irving has missed his fair share of time. And they're the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, 1.5 games up on the 76ers, who have an MVP on their team. And they're missing all these different guys for so many different lengths of time. Really, I think what it's going to come down to for the Brooklyn Nets, and I think that this Brooklyn Nets team might prove whether or not the regular season really matters. Because if your team as talented as this, and you're able to get the 1 seed just by resting guys anyways, I know they've been injured, but they're still getting some rest time. If you're able to just let guys sit for a period of time and still get the 1 seed, and you end up winning the championship, why does it matter? Why does the regular season matter to a team like the Brooklyn Nets? And I think ultimately the 1 seed in the East is super valuable. If the Nets get the 1 seed, they will play whoever's the 8 seed in the first round, and they are going to destroy them. They will play, and then they're going to play probably either the Hawks or the Knicks if the standings stay. And I love the Hawks and the Knicks. Shout out to both of these teams. They're having incredible seasons. They're going to step all over one of those teams. Will it probably be a fun series? Yeah, maybe one of those teams takes a game or two. But I think the Nets ultimately destroy them. I think it's a 4 or 5 game series in the end. And then they've now had a cakewalk through their first 2 rounds to play whoever gets out of a Bucks-Sixers, potentially, assuming there's no upsets, whoever gets out of a Bucks-Sixers series. The Bucks-Sixers series is going to be hell for both teams. Both of those teams are going to go like crazy at each other because they feel like they have something to prove, only to show up against a Brooklyn Nets team with 3 top 15 players, great role players, and they're going to potentially punch them in the mouth. Can the Bucks or the Sixers beat the Nets? Absolutely. But I think it gets way more difficult when you have to play one of those other teams before facing the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Sixers, the reason why I've been feeling like they have the opportunity to upset the Nets is because they've had that 1 seed. They've had the potential to play an 8 seed and then a 4 and 5 matchup before playing the Milwaukee Bucks, or before playing the Brooklyn Nets. And they avoid the Milwaukee Bucks, forcing the Nets to have to go against Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton in that second round. That's a really, really tough second round matchup. But if they don't have to do that, it's going to be really tough for me not to think that the Nets are just going to waltz through the Eastern Conference for the most part. I think it's not a cakewalk no matter who they play coming out of that Sixers-Bucks series, but that team is going to be way more exhausted than this Nets team is going to be. Not just because they had to play hard during the regular season, but because they had to go through a tough postseason matchup in that second round. And so the question really comes down to, if this is what the Nets look like when they're not even fully healthy, who is going to stop the Brooklyn Nets? Who is going to stop this team from winning a championship? And like I said, there are definitely options. The Bucks, the Sixers, you go out to the West, you have the Suns, Jazz, Lakers, and Clippers, who are all really good teams. But I don't know if it's going to be enough. If I have to pick the championship today, I'm picking the Brooklyn Nets because that's just how good they are. They've shown me that they have the ability to be really good, even if their guys have bad nights. That was the big thing I was concerned about. I was like, the Nets might have to have Kyrie, Harden, or Durant score 30 points a night each to win a basketball game because those other role players just weren't cutting it. Now they've got like Nick Claxton who's stepping up. DeAndre Jordan doesn't even have to play that much. They had LaMarcus Aldridge for a little bit, ended up having to go into retirement due to health issues, but when he was showing up, he was playing great as well. The Nets have just figured it out. They've figured out exactly what they're going to do, and they're building that chemistry, which brings around the question of the fact that this Nets team, their big 3, have only played 7 games altogether. It's not a lot, and I know that I just said they had great chemistry. I know that they've been building things, but you have to wonder if that's a concern. Is it a problem when you get to the playoffs and you have these high stress situations where these 3 players might not always be on the same page? I think they're going to figure it out because they're super talented and they seem like they're good friends and everything. But you have to question whether or not it's going to be a problem. And I think that's a big part of figuring out whether the regular season matters. This Nets team is going to be a really interesting experiment. We've had some interesting experiments in the past. For example, the Houston Rockets, who tried to go without a center. They played PJ Tucker at center last year, and it didn't end up working out. And so that's not the way that people went. But the Nets have so much talent that will it even matter the regular season to them? Will it matter that their big three have only played 7 games together? And really only time's going to tell. But for right now, they look dominant. They look scary. This might be it. This might be Harden's ring. We'll see. So shout out to the Brooklyn Nets for the way that they've been playing. I did say though, I wanted to give a shout out to the Toronto Raptors, who put up a great fight against the Brooklyn Nets in this game. Pascal Siakam didn't have a very good game, and that was probably the really breaking aspect of this game for the Raptors. That's what kind of sunk them. But Siakam's been really good recently. He's been really good. Do not let this game distract you from the fact that he's been really good recently. He's not getting the praise on Twitter that a lot of other players get just because it's Siakam. He's a meme, so that's why I kind of want to make a video about the Raptors. I think their rebuild is not very far from being done before it's even started. You've still got really good players like Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, who is a guy who looks like a potential future defensive player of the year. Anunoby is so good. I love OG Anunoby's game. I'm really happy to see him showing out. Malachi Flynn has shown a lot of flashes of great potential, and just their ability to really develop talent. They continue to find gems in the G League. They can, like Chris Boucher is a prime example of that. But the Raptors have always been great at talent development, and I think that in the end, the Raptors are going to kind of turn things around quickly, especially if they manage to jump in the lottery. If they manage to get a pretty solid pick this year, and they add it to a core already of Pascal Siakam, who's still pretty young, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Malachi Flynn, Gary Trent Jr., who I didn't even talk about because he didn't play tonight. I love his game. I think he's going to be really good, and I think him and VanVleet at this point are their backcourt of the future. I know VanVleet is older in terms of when you look at some of their other young guys, but he still has a lot of good years ahead of him, I think. That's a really solid team. They've got to get a good big man. If they were able to jump up and draft a Mobley somehow, that would be incredible. I don't think it's going to happen because that would require a lot of luck, but we've seen crazier things happen with the lottery in the past. But the Raptors deserve a shout out for, even though they lost this game, they fought really hard without Gary Trent Jr., who's been really good. And I just think this Raptors rebuild is closer to being done than a lot of people realize. Outside of those two teams, outside of that game, we have breaking news in the NBA because the Oklahoma City Thunder, for the first time in a month, have won a NBA basketball game. Round of applause. Thank you very much. The Thunder won. They beat the Celtics by 4 points. I didn't think it was going to happen. I just said earlier in my hot takes video, someone said the Celtics are going to lose to the Thunder tonight. And I said, absolutely not. There's no way. And I jinxed it. It's exactly what happened. It was weird. It was bittersweet because I love seeing the Thunder win. I think ultimately the guys deserve this win. They've really been feeling the weight of that losing streak. And I think that this is going to be good for their morale, and they've all played well. I've said it in the past before, when we head into this tanking season, I'm okay with losses. I am okay because I know that ultimately that is what's going to help us get back to contention. We need to get these decent picks. But at the same time, I'm okay with wins, or I'm always going to be happy with wins, but I'm best with wins if it's the young players doing it. And tonight, Dort had a great game. Bazley had a great game. Y'all need to write some up. Some of you, look at me right here in the eye right now. Some of you who wrote off Darius Bazley, you need to apologize right now in the comment section below. Go down there right now. Just pause the video, go down and apologize to Darius Bazley, because a lot of people, Thunder fans especially, wrote him off as part of this young core very early into the season. And he's putting together a great stretch. He had another great game tonight. Solid defensive potential. He's finding his rhythm. He's letting the game come to him more. And people forget he missed a ton of time with a I can't remember the name of the injury. I think it was something with his clavicle or something with his shoulder. I think he had like a separated shoulder or something like that, which is a bad injury. And he sat out for a lot of time, and he's come back off that injury and played great since then. He started the season pretty poorly, but he missed out on a ton of development time that a guy like Dort, who is continuing to be better, he has made us a competitive team on any given night, which is incredible with the way that we've been playing. He missed out on that time that Dort, like a guy like Dort had, a guy like Poku had, a guy like Maladon had. So you have to be more patient with Darius Bazley because he missed that time. And I think ultimately Bazley is an important staple to this roster going forward. So apologize to him right now. Dort, another great game. I don't need to tell you about Luke Dort. I think everyone knows. The Celtics should have won this game though. This was a game that the Celtics cannot lose. Fournier, really, really bad tonight. He is coming off of, I believe it's COVID. I know he went out with health-related protocols. I think someone said he had COVID, which is, as someone who had COVID, I get it. That shit destroys you. It's really tough. And ultimately, I think that he's going to be okay. I think he is going to be okay for the Celtics, but This is a game they got to win. Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard had incredible games tonight. Shout out to them. I really thought they were going to take the game away from the Thunder right at the last seconds, and they just fell a little short. Marcus Smart did not have a good game. He kind of shot the Celtics out of this one. Also, a really confusing foul. The Thunder are up 3 with 30 seconds to go, and there's about a 7-second difference between shot clock and game clock. So if they get a stop, they've got 7 seconds. And Marcus Smart fouled Teo Maledon to give us 2 free throws and make it a 5-point game. I don't understand why he just didn't go for the stop. Maybe he was going for a steal and just fouled, but it looked aggressive. It looked like if you ever play 2K, when you hit X one time and your guy like tackles the other team's player, that's kind of what it looked like. So I don't know if it was on purpose, if it was an accident. Either way, it was a bad foul. So shout out to the Thunder getting a win. We could have been 1.5 games back of the 2 seed because the Timberwolves won tonight, but it doesn't always happen. Speaking of the Timberwolves, 7-point win over the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets continue to play poorly, and I don't think anyone's surprised about that. The Minnesota Timberwolves, though, they are stepping up big time. Someone said recently that, I think it was Chris Finch said in an interview that, or like a post-game interview type of kind of thing, that the Timberwolves aren't trying to tank. He said specifically straight up, we are not trying to lose games. We are going to go into every game to win, which I know all coaches say, but it really feels like it. Like with the Thunder, it feels like we're sitting guys to lose. The Timberwolves are playing guys to win. The Timberwolves want to win and establish a winning culture, and I think that goes a long way. Are they probably going to lose their picks to the Warriors? Yeah, that's kind of the way it seems to be going, but it might not even matter because Anthony Edwards is really good. D'Angelo Russell has been impressive. He's looked like his Brooklyn Nets self, and Karl Anthony Towns is really good as well. I don't have to tell you how good he is. They've all been playing super well since Chris Finch came in. I think he's done an incredible job with this team. He was just a better coach than Saunders was at this point, and the Timberwolves, I think, have a really bright future. I've mentioned it a couple times in some recent videos, but always got to mention it again. Let's see, what other games? I don't even know if I want to talk about Mavericks Warriors. This game got ugly immediately. It was like a 30-point game in the second quarter. I think the Warriors had like 39 points at halftime, or maybe even 29. I think it was 29 points at halftime. So credit to them for scoring 103 by the end of the game. Maybe I think the Mavericks stopped trying a little bit, but turned up in the second half. Curry just needed help. Curry was outscoring every Warrior on the team at one point, which is not good. As a basketball fan, I can tell you that's really bad. In case you don't watch basketball, that's terrible. He just needs help, and I'm sure he misses Clay a lot. They were dealing with a lot of injuries. Bazemore is out. Pascal has missed time. James Wiseman's out. Damian Lee's missed time. They are missing a lot of guys, but this was just embarrassing. This was just bad, and this was a big game for them. The Warriors needed this win because the Mavericks are another team that's right there on the edge of the Western Conference playoff picture. And the Mavericks came into tonight and said, we are not going to lose this spot. We're going to destroy you. And Luka had a monster game, like a monster game. People have been asking me, if the Mavericks get the 5 seed, does Luka deserve some consideration for MVP? And I think he does. I think he deserves consideration, but I really don't think there's anything he can do at this point, or almost anyone can do at this point to take it from Nikola Jokic. I think it's kind of set in stone at this point that he's going to win. But Luka, going forward, will be an MVP candidate pretty much every season he plays. A lot of people picked him this year. I thought it was a little premature just because I didn't think the Mavericks were going to be good enough. Team success weighs a lot in that MVP conversation, but statistically, he does have a case. Trailblazers Pacers. I won't talk about this one because the Pacers were super injured, but this was another really ugly game. Anthony Simons, dunk contest champion, came out balled tonight for the Portland Trailblazers. This is what they need. This is the production they need from their bench that they don't get a lot of nights. The Pacers just continue to fall. They're dealing with a lot of injuries, like I said, but all these games matter. These games matter a lot, and there still is time for them to fall out of the play-in tournament even. They're at that 10 spot, and they're only like a game and a half, 2 games ahead of the team right below them. It's not a lot of space. Breathing room is getting really short in that Eastern Conference play-in spot. And finally, Bucks Hornets. This was just a really good game from the Bucks. Brook Lopez, he looked like prime Splash Mountain in this game, and a 10-point win for the Bucks. This was a great game for the Bucks. This is what they have to do. Jrue Holiday didn't score a lot, but he put up some good numbers. He played great defense. Giannis balled out. I almost said Giannis twice. Chris Middleton also played really, really well. And Bryn Forbes had a good game for them. A lot of nights, they just really lack that bench production. Bryn Forbes is a guy who I think can be a spark plug off the bench for him. He's just got to find that consistency. And in terms of the Charlotte Hornets, they're still really fun. I love the Charlotte Hornets. If you're a Hornets fan, I'm also a Hornets fan. I absolutely love the Charlotte Hornets. I kind of want a jersey of theirs, to be honest, because they're just so much fun to watch. And I think LaMelo Ball is going to come back soon, and I think the Hornets are going to be dangerous in that potential play-in tournament. I would not want to play them if I'm playing in the play-in tournament, or who knows, maybe even they just end up with the 6th seed straight up because they have the talent to do so. And their young core is on a fast track to being really, really good really soon. So that's all the games from today. I don't think there's any other narratives I need to talk about. No, I don't think so. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. Leave a like, leave a subscribe if you did. Comment below what your takeaways were from the games today. Can anyone stop the Brooklyn Nets? Or is their biggest enemy to them themselves? Let me know with all that in the comments below. I will see you guys later. Real one, say it back.